Okay, so you know how much we love to dig into the nitty-gritty here, and today we're going to tackle something really fundamental.
Yeah.
When it comes to organizations and how they make sure that their systems and their data stay safe, accessible. You know, when stuff hits the fan, cyber attacks, technical failures, like those kinds of things. We're talking mission critical stuff.
Right, the stuff that keeps the lights on.
Exactly. And we've got this presentation from MCS Inc.
Okay.
outlining their whole approach to what they call mission critical solutions.
I like it.
So our goal with this deep dive is to pull out those core concepts, the practical takeaways around, business continuity, disaster recovery, and cyber resiliency.
Absolutely.
How do you keep things running? How do you bounce back? And we're going to get into the strategies and solutions that are out there to minimize downtime and data loss.
It's interesting because it's becoming less about if something will disrupt your operations and more about when it's inevitable.
Yeah.
So understanding how organizations are preparing for these inevitable events, how they plan to bounce back, is absolutely crucial.
Absolutely.
And I think this material from MCS Inc. is going to give us a really solid base to explore these concepts.
Okay, so let's start with who MCS Inc. actually is. They call themselves the Mission Critical Solutions Team.
Okay.
And they basically function as an MSP reseller, but they've got over 20 years of experience specifically focused on something called DRAS Plus.
DRAS Plus.
Disaster Recovery as a Service Plus.
Okay.
So what's with the plus?
Well, the core of DRAS is all about having your disaster recovery capabilities delivered as a service, usually from the cloud.
Okay.
So that plus, it probably means there's more to it than just the basic replication and recovery of systems.
Right.
It could be proactive security measures, more comprehensive support, or additional services that go beyond that standard DRAS offer to really ensure business continuity.
So it's not just about getting you back up.
Right.
It's about making sure you can stay up in the first place.
Exactly.
And that you recover even stronger.
Recover stronger.
Yeah. So MCS outlines these key solution areas, and it's all within this mission-critical framework.
Right.
And they list business continuity, resiliency, and ultra-high availability.
High availability.
Then data center migrations, storage management and performance solutions, and finally, backup and recovery solutions.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is.
So when you look at that lineup, what's the underlying connection there for you?
I see these as kind of like layers of defense and recovery.
Okay, I like that.
Right? You've got business continuity as that overarching strategy.
Keeping the business running no matter what.
During and after a disruption.
Yeah.
Right? Then you have resiliency, that's like the built-in ability of your systems to withstand those disruptions.
Keep operating no matter what hits them.
And then ultra-high availability takes it a step further. It's like aiming for near-zero downtime.
For the things that absolutely cannot go down.
Data center migrations, you got to do it carefully, or it becomes a disruption itself.
Right.
Efficient storage management that makes sure your data is always accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And then strong backup and recovery, that's your safety net when things go wrong.
Your ultimate safety net.
Right. So it's all about minimizing the impact and ensuring that you can bounce back.
They all work together.
Yeah. So the strategy, the ability to withstand the aim for no downtime, the careful moves, the accessible data, and that safety net.
I like it.
Now, in terms of how MCS actually delivers on this, what kind of proactive services do they offer?
Okay.
They talk about developing policies to reduce cyber risk and increase cyber recovery capabilities.
Right. So that's getting ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. A strong defense starts with having really good policies in place.
Yes.
Like who has access to what data, how that data should be protected, and what the plan is if a cyber incident actually happens.
Absolutely.
By being proactive and having those policies in place, organizations can lower their chances of getting hit. And if they do get hit, they know exactly what to do.
It's all planned out.
Okay, so they also talk about implementing data retention policies and protection strategies.
Yeah.
And this is about meeting those compliance needs and keeping costs under control.
Right, because it's not just about hoarding data forever.
No.
Data retention policies tell you how long you need to keep different kinds of data.
Right.
For legal reasons or for business reasons.
Makes sense.
And good data protection strategies,
Yeah.
they ensure that the right data is backed up, that it's secured appropriately, and that it's managed efficiently.
Right.
So you don't want to be paying to store data that you don't need anymore.
No.
But you absolutely need to make sure you're meeting all those regulatory requirements.
Right. It's a balancing act.
It is a balancing act between compliance cost and risk.
Okay. And then a third proactive service they highlight is refreshing cybersecurity and cyber recovery infrastructure.
Okay.
And they specifically mentioned using new technologies, including AI, for better cost efficiency. So AI in this context, what are we talking about?
Well, AI can be used in a lot of ways. It can help identify potential threats and vulnerabilities faster and more accurately.
Okay.
And it can also automate certain parts of the recovery process,
Right.
which makes it faster and less prone to human error.
So, for example, AI could analyze system logs to detect anomalies.
Exactly, like things that could indicate an attack is happening or about to happen.
And it can also predict potential hardware failures.
And that allows for proactive intervention.
So by staying up to date with these advancements, organizations can really improve their security and have more efficient recovery processes.
It's all about staying ahead of the game.
Okay, so let's move on to how they actually implement these solutions.
Yeah.
And their process starts with requirements gathering.
That sounds pretty fundamental to me.
Right, it's like you got to understand what you need before you build it, but what's important to get right at this stage?
I think it's really about deeply understanding the needs and priorities of all the stakeholders.
Within the organization.
Yeah, within the organization, what are their critical systems? What data is the most important?
Right.
And what are their tolerance levels for downtime or data loss?
Can they handle a few hours, or are we talking minutes?
Exactly. Capturing all those detailed requirements ensures that the final solution really meets the organization's specific needs and objectives.
So they move on to architecture design.
Okay.
And they emphasize high availability HA, disaster recovery testing, DR testing,
Right.
scalability, microservices availability, and a reliable foundation.
That's a lot of technical jargon.
It is, but basically what they're doing is designing a system that's built to be resilient and recoverable.
Okay, I like that.
So high availability means the system is designed to minimize downtime.
Right, through redundancy often.
Exactly, and DR testing, that's crucial.
Yeah, you got to make sure your recovery plan actually works.
In the real world.
Yeah, in a real scenario.
Right, and scalability ensures that the system can grow with the organization.
As they need it.
As they need it, exactly.
Right.
And microservices availability, that's important for those modern applications that are built as a collection of small independent services.
Right.
And you need to make sure each of those can fail and recover independently.
Like little building blocks.
And a reliable foundation, that means using proven technologies and best practices.
Okay.
So all these elements contribute to a more robust and dependable system.
A system you can trust.
Yeah. Okay, next up is embedded appliance deployment.
Embedded appliance deployment.
And they mentioned using clean tested versions with version control and AI capabilities.
So it sounds like they're really going for a standardized and reliable deployment process.
Exactly. By using pre-configured and tested appliances, they can reduce the complexity and the chances of errors during deployment. Version control ensures that they can track and manage changes to the software.
Right.
And the configurations and that AI integration at this stage could involve things like automated configuration,
Initial system checks.
even predictive analytics to identify potential issues early on.
So it's like having a smart assistant helping you set everything up.
Right, exactly. And then testing.
Testing. Always testing.
It's a recurring theme. They highlight HA testing, security vulnerability testing, and AI vulnerability testing.
Right. It's not enough to just set it and forget it.
No, you got to put it through its paces.
Exactly. You got to make sure it can handle the pressure.
Right. So HA testing proves that those high availability mechanisms actually work.
Like failover systems kicking in when they're supposed to.
Right. Security vulnerability testing that identifies weaknesses in your defenses that attackers could exploit.
You got to find those holes before the bad guys do.
Exactly. And AI vulnerability testing, that's about making sure that the AI-powered security tools themselves are secure.
Right, because AI is becoming so prevalent in security.
It is.
You got to make sure those tools are secure too.
Right. So regular, rigorous testing, that gives you confidence in your ability to withstand and recover.
It's peace of mind.
Peace of mind now. To make things more efficient, they bring in automation. MCS talks about automated DR and HA processes, performance monitoring, and orchestrated automated backup and recovery, BUR.
BUR for both cloud and on-premises environments.
Right. So they're taking the manual work and the potential for mistakes out of the equation.
That's the goal.
Right. So automating DR and HA processes means that when an incident occurs, Those recovery steps happen quickly and consistently.
Minimizing downtime.
Minimizing downtime, exactly. Performance monitoring helps detect anomalies that might indicate a problem.
It's like having an early warning system.
Exactly. And then orchestrating backup and recovery across different environments, whether it's your own data center or the cloud,
Right.
that simplifies management and ensures a coordinated recovery process.
So everything works together smoothly.
Okay, let's dive a little deeper into backup and recovery BUR.
BUR.
They emphasize scheduling those automated backups and crucially testing those recovery procedures.
That's the part people often forget.
They do. You'd be surprised how many organizations have backup systems, but they never test them.
Yeah, they just assume it's going to work when they need it.
And that's a dangerous assumption.
It is very dangerous.
Regular testing is so important. It's the only way to make sure that your backups are actually viable.
Right, and that your procedures work.
You might find out during a test that a backup is corrupted.
Or that a step is missing.
Or that a step is missing, and it's way better to find that out during a test than during a real crisis.
Absolutely.
Okay, MCS also highlights customizable cyber resiliency, security, and recovery options.
Okay.
They talk about different redundancy scenarios, unidirectional firewalls, network resiliency, immutable storage, and their BUR-powered appliances for various environments. Why is that level of customization so important?
Well, because every organization has different needs.
Right.
And different risk tolerances.
Right.
So customization allows them to tailor the solutions to their specific requirements.
So, for example, a highly regulated industry might need stricter data retention policies and more robust security. Unidirectional firewalls, those offer a very specific security advantage.
Right, they prevent traffic from flowing back into the protected environment.
So it limits the spread of an attack.
Exactly like a one-way street.
Immutable storage that ensures that your backups can't be tampered with.
Which is crucial for ransomware protection.
Right, and then offering a range of BUR appliances that provides flexibility in deployment.
Whether it's for a small business or a large enterprise or cloud environments,
they've got you covered.
They've got you covered. Now, they also talk about how they handle production shutdowns.
Okay.
And they offer similar customizable options for cyber and network resiliency.
So it's like a consistent toolkit.
It is, regardless of the problem.
Yeah.
By having that consistent set of technologies and approaches that can be adapted to different situations, whether it's a cyber attack causing a shutdown or a failure in the network infrastructure,
right,
you can respond more effectively.
It's about being prepared for anything.
Exactly. And they emphasize that unidirectional firewall again, keeping that recovery environment isolated.
Isolated and safe.
Exactly.
Okay, let's touch on what they call data protection hot topics.
Okay.
They list a bunch of acronyms.
Giving with them.
API tenant blobs, S3 container zone, AD.
Okay.
Endpoint, backup restore, O365, disaster recovery migrations to Office 365, on-premise to Azure migration.
Wow, it's like a snapshot of the modern data landscape.
It is. It's complex.
That's constantly evolving.
So APIs, that's how different applications talk to each other.
Right, so securing them is vital.
Tenant blobs, S3 containers, zones, these are all about cloud infrastructure and storage.
The building blocks of the cloud.
AD Active Directory manages user identities and access.
Right, who has access to what?
Endpoint, backup restore that's protecting data on individual devices like laptops.
Okay.
And with so many organizations moving to the cloud.
Like Office 365 and Azure.
You got to ensure the disaster recovery of those environments and manage the migrations themselves.
Huge considerations.
Huge considerations. And then they mention SLAs, RPOs, and RTOs, noting that these depend on the workload type and size.
So those are the key metrics that define how quickly and completely you can recover.
Exactly. So SLAs, service level agreements, those define the expected level of service. RPOs, recovery point objectives, specify the maximum amount of data loss you can tolerate.
Okay, measured in time.
Measured in time. So an RPO of 4 hours means you could lose up to 4 hours of data.
Got it.
And RTO's recovery time objectives, that's how long it should take to restore your systems and data after an incident.
Right.
These metrics are really crucial for setting expectations and designing recovery solutions that align with your business needs.
And the criticality of the applications.
Right. A critical high-volume system is going to have much tighter RPO and RPO targets.
Yeah, than a less critical one.
Okay, it's interesting to see the partners that MCS works with. They've got Veritas, IBM, RHEL, Dell Barracuda, InfoStream, Terragon, NetView, and VOX ISM.
Oh, that's quite a list.
It is. It suggests they're really leveraging a range of established technologies.
Yeah, they're not just going it alone.
Right. These partnerships likely give them access to the best technologies and the expertise in different areas.
Right. From data protection software to infrastructure providers and security solutions.
So they can build more comprehensive solutions for their clients.
It's all about collaboration.
Collaboration, exactly. Now, let's look at those real-world scenarios that they present.
Okay.
The first one is a production shutdown.
Okay.
Think cyber infection ransomware or a worm.
Nasty stuff.
They outline two solutions. The first one is recovering in their IRE, the isolated recovery environment.
Isolated recovery environment.
And they talk about using the last known good data or environment.
So that's the ideal first course of action.
It is. The isolated recovery environment is a separate protected environment where they store clean copies of your systems and data.
Right.
If your production environment is compromised, you want to be able to quickly restore from a clean backup in the IRE.
It's the fastest way to get back up and running.
With minimal data loss.
Minimal data loss.
The second solution for a production shutdown is rebuilding production.
Okay.
And they point out that this is usually necessary if there isn't a clean backup.
Right.
And that it's much more expensive.
Which really highlights the value of having that IRE and good backups.
Absolutely. Rebuilding an entire production environment from scratch takes a lot of time, resources, and you're likely to lose data.
Yeah. It's not ideal.
So invest in robust backup and recovery capabilities, including a well-maintained IRE.
That's your primary line of defense.
Okay. The second scenario is a network infrastructure shutdown or failure.
Okay, so the network goes down.
The network goes down, and they offer two solutions.
Okay.
The first is recovering the networking and server infrastructure in the IRE.
Okay.
And they talk about things like router configurations, Wi-Fi access points, servers, domains.
So it's not just about the data. It's the whole network that needs to be recovered.
The whole network, exactly. Even if your data is safe, if your network is down, your business is down.
You can't do anything.
You can't do anything. So being able to recover those critical network components.
The routers, the switches, the server configuration.
All in the IRE.
Right.
That ensures you can get back online quickly.
It's about restoring that connectivity.
The alternative they present for a network failure is rebuilding the network infrastructure.
Okay.
Buying and setting up new equipment.
That sounds like a much longer process.
It is. Sourcing, configuring, deploying new network hardware takes time.
And time is money.
And time is money, exactly.
Especially when your business is down.
So recovering from a backup of your network configurations in the IRE,
right,
that's the faster and more efficient approach.
Much faster.
And here's a key point they emphasize for both of these scenarios.
Okay.
Unidirectional firewall isolation from production, meaning IRE cannot be easily attacked.
So why is that unidirectional aspect so important for security?
It's a vital security measure.
Okay.
A unidirectional firewall allows data to flow in one direction, typically from production to the IRE for backups, but it prevents communication going back the other way.
Okay.
Under normal circumstances.
Right.
This creates a barrier that prevents malware or attackers in the production environment.
From spreading to the clean recovery environment.
It's like a one-way mirror.
I like that analogy.
Okay. The third scenario is a cloud-level attack.
Okay, so now we're in the cloud.
We're in the cloud. And this could affect various cloud components. They offer two solutions again.
Okay.
The first is recovering those cloud elements using tools like Data Protection or native Azure tools.
Okay.
And they specifically mention recovering things like APIs, tenants, blobs, zones, domain names.
So it's about having the ability to restore those fundamental building blocks of your cloud presence.
Exactly. And they make a point of saying it avoids BUR of your phone to your phone.
That's a funny way of putting it.
It is, but it highlights that they're talking about enterprise-level cloud recovery, not just backing up personal devices. The second solution for a cloud attack is rebuilding that cloud infrastructure.
Okay, so starting from scratch.
Essentially.
Which is time-consuming and complex.
It is. It involves manual configuration, restoring large amounts of data.
Right.
So having a robust cloud backup and recovery solution
makes the recovery much smoother.
Much smoother. And just like the other scenarios, they reiterate the unidirectional firewall isolation from production, meaning IRE cannot be easily attacked.
So that security of the recovery environment is a top priority.
It is even in the cloud.
Even in the cloud.
Now the presentation shifts gears and they start talking about key questions that they pose to their customers.
Okay.
And thinking about this from your perspective, the listener, these are valuable questions to consider for your own organization.
Okay, I'm listening.
What are you doing to improve your cyber resiliency?
That's a good question.
It is. Cyber resiliency goes beyond just preventing attacks.
Right. It's about withstanding, adapting, recovering,
And is there anything that your leadership team is particularly concerned about regarding cyber resiliency?
You got to understand what keeps them up at night.
You do, because that helps you focus your efforts on the biggest risks.
Right.
They also ask, how do you work with your cloud service provider, CSP partners, to ensure data compliance and resiliency?
That's a big one.
It is in the cloud. It's a shared responsibility model.
Right.
You have to work closely with your CSP to understand who's responsible for what.
It's a partnership.
It is. And how is your team monitoring that those SLAs are being met?
You got to make sure you're getting what you're paying for.
Absolutely. And how are you balancing those increasing costs of cloud storage with the need for compliance and resiliency?
That's a tough one.
It is. Cloud storage costs can really add up.
They can.
And finding cost-effective ways to maintain compliance and data resilience, that's a challenge.
It's a balancing act.
It is. Okay. The final questions they pose are, what are you doing to ensure uptime and speed of recovery in the event of an incident? And do you have a clear understanding of what full recovery would entail for your cloud infrastructure?
So it's about being prepared.
It is uptime, and the speed of recovery are critical for minimizing business disruption.
Absolutely.
And understanding what needs to be recovered in the cloud.
Not just the data, but the configuration, the services.
The interdependencies.
It's a complex ecosystem.
It is, and you need to understand all of it to develop a comprehensive recovery plan.
A plan that actually works.
Okay, so they move on to common challenges that their customers face.
Okay.
And these probably resonate with a lot of organizations. Things like the struggle to deploy and secure a growing number of applications globally.
Right.
Dealing with fragmented backup and recovery solutions.
Different tools for different things.
Securing environments with limited in-house expertise.
The skills gap is real.
It is. And the slow pace of application deployment and maintenance.
It's hard to keep up.
It is. Do any of them sound familiar?
Oh, yeah. These are pain points for a lot of businesses.
They are the increasing complexity of IT environments, the evolving threats, the shortage of cybersecurity professionals.
It creates a lot of hurdles.
It does. Other challenges they mention include the inevitability of breaches and downtime.
Right.
Lengthy recovery times, expanding attack surfaces, reliance on manual processes.
It's a constant battle.
It is. But the reality is that security incidents and outages are going to happen.
They are.
The key is to minimize the impact by having those plans in place.
For prevention, detection, and recovery.
Exactly. Okay. Finally, they address some common objections they hear from clients.
Okay, let's hear them.
One key point is explaining the shared responsibility model in cloud computing.
Okay. For anyone who's not familiar, what's the core idea behind that?
It clarifies that in the cloud, the provider is responsible for the security of the cloud infrastructure itself.
Okay.
The hardware, the networking, the underlying services. But the customer is responsible for the security in the cloud.
Okay.
Their data, their applications, their configurations.
So you can't just assume the cloud provider is handling everything.
You need to manage and secure your own stuff.
It's a shared responsibility.
It is. They also address the question of using native cloud provider tools versus third-party solutions.
Okay.
They specifically mention Veritas Alta data protection and the need to identify gaps in ransomware protection.
Right. That's a big decision for a lot of organizations.
It is. So what are the key considerations there?
Well, native cloud provider tools, they often integrate well with a platform.
Right.
And they can be easy to use for basic backup and recovery.
Okay.
But they might not have all the advanced features or the cross-platform compatibility.
If you're using multiple clouds.
Exactly. Or specialized capabilities like really strong ransomware protection.
So third-party solutions like Veritas, they often offer a wider range of features.
And they could provide a consistent approach across different environments.
And they might have better security features.
Designed to counter those modern threats like ransomware.
So it's about assessing your needs and finding those gaps in protection.
Right.
Another objection is the concern that adding third-party tools might introduce vulnerabilities.
That's a valid concern.
It is, but MCS counters this by highlighting Veritas's 360 defense message. They talk about immutability of backups, ransomware protection, centralized visibility and control.
So it's about showing that the solution is secure and manageable.
It is. Any software can have vulnerabilities.
Right.
So it's about choosing reputable vendors.
With a good track record.
And features like immutability that ensure backups can't be messed with by ransomware.
That's a big one.
It is. And they also address the argument that native tools are more efficient and scalable.
Okay.
By talking about features like elastic platform.
That can scale as you need them.
Cost-effective, deduplicated storage, intelligent discovery of cloud assets, granular recovery options.
Right.
So third-party tools can be just as performant and cost-effective.
It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
It's not. Lastly, they address the objection that more tools means more complexity.
Right.
By emphasizing consolidation into a centralized management console.
That can span different environments.
Hybrid and multi-cloud.
It's about simplifying, not adding complexity.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive into MCS Inc.'s perspective, it's clear that ensuring the safety and accessibility of mission-critical systems and data, it's a lot of work.
It is.
It involves being proactive with policies building resilient infrastructure testing recovery plans.
Automating, leveraging adaptable options.
For all sorts of problems.
Cyber attacks, infrastructure failures, cloud issues.
And it's not just about the technical solutions. It's about understanding your own organization's needs.
The challenges you face.
The hesitations you might have.
It's about asking those tough questions.
It is those questions that MCS poses to their customers. Those are valuable for any organization.
Yeah, if you want to improve your defenses and your recovery capabilities.
Absolutely. So when you consider the increasing sophistication of cyber threats and our growing reliance on complex cloud environments, how confident are you in your current strategy to not only prevent disruptions,
but to recover quickly when something happens?
Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
It's a matter of when.
That's a question worth pondering.
It is.
This has been a deep dive.
Deep dive.
See you next time.
Until then.